Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to analyze a rapid game that I played on chess.com last night. The game ended in a draw, and I want to find out a couple of things. One, was it actually drawn at the end when we repeated moves? And two, was it even the whole game, or did one or both of us have chances throughout the game? If you're new to my channel, I'm not a titled player or a chess coach. I'm just a random person who enjoys chess, and I'm trying to get better at it. This is the position in which we ended the game. We had repeated the moves a few times here, and I will turn on the analysis, and it does say that we were drawn, but just backing up, drawn. Okay, I thought that we were. I was playing with the white pieces. My opponent had an extra pawn, but they had their king out here on this side of it, and so I was just going up and down, checking them. And at some point, they came toward my rook as I checked them, and so I jumped back here to aim at this pawn, which I realized was defended, but I don't know what I would have done if they would have gotten all the way next to my rook. I guess just run further away? I was also worried about them checking me. If I quit checking them and their king was over here, I would have only had a couple of places to go, but I suppose I could have just gone back and forth. That's why I tried to keep checking them. But like I said, if they got too close to me, then their king's not over here to where they could guard the rook, and the rook has to stay there. If their pawn advanced, I wasn't sure what I would do about that other than just take it, and then, I don't know. But let's run the game review and see if we were even most of the way or if I had chances. We actually were even most of the way, according to that graph, but no, I never had chances. Oh my opponent had chances. They were ahead for a little bit here early in the game, and then they were further ahead there in the middle of the game. But other than that, it was drawn the whole time. Let's see, will it pop up a number here? -4. That's the highest number that I can get to show up, and the number won't change when I move the cursor. So this graph still isn't perfect. Over here, it's not going to tell me what the number was for that low spot, but it says we both played really well. I had one blunder. I'm going to assume it's that one right there where I dropped down and gave them the -4 lead, and my opponent had a blunder, a miss, and a mistake. Oh, I also had 3 mistakes. Okay. And it says we both played like 1950s. Okay, so we must have played a really good game, but again, I had a blunder and gave them a -4 advantage at some point, but then they blundered it back. Okay, well, let's just take a look. It looks like we played the first 8 moves of the opening without any problems, but then I made a mistake on move 9. I opened with the Vienna game here, and my opponent got this bishop out, which is called the Anderson defense. Honestly, I've been having really good luck if they get the knight out in this turn instead of that bishop, but because then I play f4, put the knight behind it, and I'm getting pretty good at that. I'm not that good at this one because now I don't want to move the f-pawn because of where their bishop is. I'm going to have trouble castling over here. So I get my bishop out, and now we're in the bishop's opening, and they get their knight out, and I get my knight out. Now it says we're back in the Vienna game, and then after d6, which was their best move at the time, and castling, which was my best move at the time, they're supposed to castle here, but they played c6, which wasn't counted as incorrect. Oh, and I did wonder about this. Is d4 my best move? Okay, now that my knight's here helping to guard this square, it does say that d4 is my best move. Okay, so we're doing very well. They are supposed to take it. It's the only move, and I'm supposed to take back with the knight, and they're supposed to castle. And here my best move, according to the engine, is to drop this knight back and attack the bishop. But it says they would leave it there. I think they would just drop it back one, but it says they would play bishop to g4, and maybe they would, but then I would just move my queen up. I don't know. I might move the pawn up. Oh, I couldn't move the pawn up if the knight was moved out of the way because it would be pinned. Okay. Maybe I was thinking about that because I played bishop to e3. It's not one of the top moves. It wasn't counted as a mistake, but it moves the eval bar just a little bit, and my opponent is supposed to play knight b to d7. They're supposed to continue getting pieces out, but instead they dropped that bishop back as if I had attacked it, which I hadn't, but they did that. Okay, and now that I have the bishop in the way, it is okay to move the f-pawn, and in fact, it says f3 is my best move. Maybe it is, the engine is still worried about this bishop coming out here to g4. I don't know, but it does say f3 or h3, both of which prevent the bishop from coming to g4. But I guess I wasn't worried about that because my queen has, so many safe places that it can move to, not there if the bishop came. Also, if the bishop came, I could always play f3. So I guess I'm not worried about that. Or maybe I was worried about that. I played knight over here to f5, which blocks the bishop from getting there. It also opens up this attack. It says that was my mistake, my first mistake. My idea, of course, was if they take my bishop on e3, then like this, then my knight pops back and recaptures. And if instead they take the knight, I can take with the pawn. And this bishop is still defended by this pawn. So I thought either way I was good. What's the problem with this? The problem with this is that they can just take it with the bishop. Okay, but I thought that they would. Why is that a problem? They're giving up their bishop for a knight. And it says it would go just like I said, except, yeah, if they took there, I would take with the pawn, then they would take on e3, and I would take with the pawn. My pawns wouldn't even be doubled because they had switched files. And then it says they would play d5, which would attack this bishop, and this bishop would have to run away. It says e2, but I don't know, I might go the other way. And they would just be ahead, but I'm not sure why. All right, I followed that line out for quite some ways there and didn't see why my opponent would be ahead. Also, several of those moves seemed dubious. I don't mean dubious as in they're not good, because they're from Stockfish. They're probably okay. I mean dubious as in I don't think my opponent or I would have played them. So after about 5 or 6 moves, that line wouldn't be what it's suggesting. So yeah, I don't know why they're ahead for taking this. But my opponent played d5 first, which was their second best move, and it still puts them ahead. In the first line, they would have played that after the 2 even trades. But they played it first, and now they're only up -1. And here I, obviously had a choice to make. My problem was that if I saved the light squared bishop, then they would take my e-pawn. That's what I thought. If I saved the light squared bishop by moving it anywhere, they would take the e-pawn. Our queens would be facing each other, and my knight wouldn't be defended anymore. So that's why I took their bishop first, and that does say it's my best move. Okay, so I took the bishop first. Their only move is to take back with the pawn. It would have been a blunder had they taken back with the queen. I don't know why. Or maybe I do know why. Okay, I'm following the line. This time it did make sense. If they take back with the queen, I get to save the knight by checking because nothing's guarding that square. When they move the king over, then I can maybe take this pawn or save the bishop. So they took back with the pawn, which was their best move, their only move. And now my only move, or remember earlier it said I would drop my bishop back to b2, but my only move is b3, which is what I said I would have probably done in the other situation, and that's what I did. They're still up -1 because they can take this pawn, but they have to take it with the knight. I don't know why. They're still up quite a ways if they just take my knight with their bishop, and I take back, and then they're going to play b5. See, I don't know why they're up -1 in that case, because we're even on material. It's not like I'm down a pawn or something. In fact, they're the ones with doubled pawns. I mean, I would have doubled pawns then too, but I don't know why they would be up -1 if they just took my knight. But instead, they did what I thought they were going to do, which is take the pawn with the pawn, which undefends the knight. But that was a mistake. Okay, see, I didn't know that was a mistake during the game. I thought it was a pretty smart play. I thought my only way to save the knight at this point would be to trade queens. It's not the only way. It says I could have just played knight to d6. Oh, well, I guess so. And then I would have been aiming at the pawn. Well, I didn't think of that. I thought of trading the queens and then maybe saving the knight this way. That's, that's kind of what I was thinking. Anyway, I did take their queen, which was my best move. It's their best move to take back, probably, obviously. And it was inaccurate for me to hop back here. Okay, I should have immediately offered a rook trade. Okay, well, I thought of that a couple of moves later. But this was inaccurate, gives my opponent nearly -1 again, but only if they'll play b5. I'm guessing that's to further restrict the movement of this bishop, because then all those pawns would be on light squares. But I don't know. I don't know if that's why they need to play b5. Now, while I was talking, the second best move moved up a little bit in its estimation, getting this knight out. In either way, it says I would move a rook to d1. Okay, so they did that second best move, which just a few seconds ago said it wasn't that good, but now it's good. I think the game review didn't think it was, but they're up close to -1. And now I'm not supposed to bring the A rook over, I'm supposed to bring the F rook over. But now I brought the A rook over. Obviously my idea is this rook is undefended, so that makes this knight pinned. That knight can't go anywhere. Again, they have to play b5. Well, if my opponent is going through this game or went through this game right after we played it, hopefully they've figured out what b5 was about. It's the third or fourth time that it's suggested it now. It's their best move. This time there is a big distance between them, but they are supposed to put that rook back. They moved it over 1, and I'm not sure why. Now we're even again. I think maybe they were protecting this pawn, but they didn't need to protect the pawn for my knight because they already had protection on the pawn. But that's the only thing that I can think of. Or maybe they realized that that knight was pinned and were getting out of the pin because the knight is well defended and they wanted to move it, but they couldn't move it until they moved the rook. So that had to have been what they were thinking. I need to play knight to c4, which is over here. Is it to go in there? That's the only thing I can think of that knight to c4 does, is to get to d6, where, it said I could have put it earlier. I did want to go to d6. I just thought it was okay to go the other way. It's slightly worse for some reason, but I went this way. I was trying to hop in here. And one reason I wanted to hop in there wasn't just for the fork of these two pieces, because I figured they would move the rook if I hopped in there, and B, the bishop hasn't moved yet. I didn't know if I wanted to trade my, knight that's moved a bunch already for a bishop that they haven't even developed. But it would have put another defender on this pawn, or attacker on this pawn. That's my idea for hopping it in there. Figured once they move the rook, whichever way they go, then I get this pawn. But I think my opponent guessed that. They must have guessed that, and they played their best move, which is knight to c5. So now they have multiple defenders on this pawn. I am still supposed to hop into d6. Okay, it's my only move. And we are about even if I make that move, which I did. They need to move the rook to f8 or e7. Stockfish flipped it a couple times, either come up or over. Okay, they moved over, which is where I thought they would go. And now I can play h3. Is it because they're trying to develop the bishop to attack this rook? Or rook f to e1. Okay, well, I did play rook f to e1. I also am adding attackers to this, and their rook is gone from defending it now. So I figured they have only 2 defenders on that pawn, and now I have 3 attackers on that pawn. Because they are a pawn ahead now, after the little thing that happened in the middle, and I'm trying to, make up for that. They are actually supposed to play bishop to g4 here, and it says if they did, then I would just move this rook over to c1. But they didn't play that. They played bishop to e6, which was apparently very close. We're right at even, and looks like we're going to be even for another several moves here. They were offering the bishop trade. I decided to take it. I figured that would double their pawns, or if they took back with the knight, that would remove a defender from this center pawn here. So I took it. It was my best move, and it was their best move to take back with the f pawn. I'm not sure why it's their best move to double their pawns, but either way, I should pick up the e pawn, right? Oh, it says it doesn't matter now. Okay, well, they took with the pawn. I wasn't sure exactly why. And my best move is a3 or b4. I thought my best move was to take the pawn. I took it and gave them a little bit of an advantage back. If they take with the c knight, which they did, and I'm going to take with my knight, and to maintain that -7, they now need to take my a pawn. But they didn't. They took my knight in here. So it's down very close to even again, and I take back, and now they take the a pawn. But for some reason, if they'd done it the other way, they would have been at -7. But this way, it's better for me somehow. I think the exact same thing would have happened. It's just in a different order. Here, I actually did think I might be down a little bit, but it looks like it's really close to even. The problem is that because they did get this pawn, I know I'm going to get a pawn, but then they're going to get another one and another one. And yeah, they have some of those doubled, but I also have my king here trapped on the back rank. If I move this d rook, because I haven't had a chance to move one of these king pawns yet. But I took on e6. I figured they would take on b2, and they did. Now my best move is to drop down and aim for their rear b pawn, which I did. I don't know why Stockfish says it would play g6 here, or rook to f7, offering the rook trade. Not sure, but my opponent decided to get rid of one more pawn. They know that they have this mass of pawns here on the B and C file, and if my C pawn gets removed, which they can do right now, there'll be nothing or very little stopping those 3 pawns. So they took that, okay, and it turned out to be just a little bit worse for them. We're very close to exactly 0 if I play f3. And the reason I have to play f3, I suppose, is because they have both of their rooks pointed there. Okay, so this is where I went down -4, I'm guessing. No, it's in my next turn where I went down -4, and I'm guessing it's because of that right there. I saw that so obviously right now, even though the engine doesn't tell me that. It says what I should do to avoid that, but doesn't say what I'm avoiding. But I think it's them taking on f2. Why didn't I see that during the game? I took that pawn, and oh no, it wasn't taking on f2. I have to play h5 or h6 now. Surely that would have been good, right? How bad would it have been if they had taken here? I'd probably with this rear pawn. Let's say they took with this one. Yeah, that would have been just as good. Okay, let's back up. It still says h5 or h6, but they would have been up +1 point whatever if they had taken this pawn, which is what I was worried about. But now h5 is over -2. They played b5 because I was attacking that pawn. Now it's protected, but now we're back to even if I play f3. Again, why didn't I see that during the game? Both their rooks are pointed at f2. Okay, so this is the blunder that put me down -4. Okay, -3.5. And it is because they can take the f2 pawn. They did not. Now they played what was one of their best moves on the previous couple of turns, which was h6, and I need to come protect this. But I did realize that I was in danger of being mated on the back rank if my other rook ever moved, so I moved my h-pawn as well, and now it's -5.5 if they'll take on f2. They finally saw it, and they took there. Okay, that was worrisome. Now my opponent's up 2 pawns, and I didn't know -6. I thought maybe -3. -6. My absolute best move is to give up this rook. And I guessed it during the game. I'm actually pretty proud of seeing this, that if I take that pawn, if they take me, obviously I get this rook here too. It's not their best move to take though. So I took that pawn. Their best move is definitely not to take over there. Their best move is to take my g pawn, which is a check, and they did. So good for them. They saw that. I didn't see that until they did it, and then I realized, oh, that saves them, saves the rook situation. It's -6.5 now. I played my best move, which is king to h1. I didn't want to go too far over, to my left so they could get a rook over here and checkmate me on that side. Okay, now it's their best move to either continue checking me or to take my rook. But again, if they take that rook, I'm going to get this one, but they're 2 pawns ahead. They didn't do either one of those. They moved that rook back over. I'm not sure why. And now they're down to -4. See, over here it was just over -6. But once they do this, then it's -4.5. Okay, Stockfish has changed its mind again. It is not my best move to take the rook. It kept saying that it was, and then no. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Now it's not even one of the top 2 moves. But it was among them, and so when I took here, it just reduced my quality a little bit. Obviously, my idea is they're going to have a much harder time checkmating me after this trade because they only have 1 rook, and they're going to have to protect that pawn for a little while. Their only move here, of course, is to take that rook, and they did. And I should have gone way down here to get behind the pawn. Why haven't I learned that yet? I got in front of it. Oh my. Rooks belong behind passed pawns. I've got to learn that. It's stuck in my head, I know it, but for some reason in a game, very often I get in front of the passed pawn, which is not as good, and now all they have to do is defend that pawn. Now, I'm not certain, but I'm guessing if I keep my pawn here threatening it so they can't move it forward, and they're still sitting here protecting it, then they're just going to bring their king over here and protect the moving forward square, is my idea. Or maybe move the rook back and protect this side or something. But I guess if they did that, then I could check them. I don't know. But they needed to play rook to c5 or rook to c3. Okay, I get rook to c3 because that way if I take their pawn, then they get to take my a pawn with check. But it says if they played rook to c3, I wouldn't take their pawn, I would protect my remaining pawn. But they blundered. They went back. Now, I don't know if that was a misclick, mouse slip, what have you, or if they were trying to do like I was supposed to do and get behind it. But you're not going to have time to get behind it because I'm going to take it. Yeah, that one I can't explain because this one makes a little bit of sense. If I take their pawn, they take mine. And this one makes a lot of sense. It defends the pawn until the king can get over there. I guess that's the idea. Or maybe their king's going to come this way and help, shepherd those 2 pawns down. I'm not sure because I'm not a grandmaster. I think I said that at the beginning. Anyway, but yeah, they blundered and they went past, which allowed me to take the pawn. It's my only move. And now I don't have to worry about a passed pawn over here. And those aren't passed pawns yet because I've got one in the way. Now I'm still down a pawn and I thought I was still behind here, but apparently according to the graph, we are at this point here. Yeah, I was never significantly behind again, although as it shows here, I might be down a fraction of a point, but it eventually settled on 0. Okay, well, let's see if we played our best moves. They played one of their best moves going after my h-pawn. I played one of my 2 best moves protecting the h-pawn. Their best move is to bring their king. My best move is a rook move. I didn't make either one of those. I made this rook move, which it says is fine. They're supposed to keep bringing their king, but they played h5, which is also fine. My best move is h4. Okay, so we're both playing really well through this section. I'm guessing that's where the rating on the game review page came from that said we both played like 1950s. We both did really well during this section, apparently. And I even had a great move. They're supposed to play a rook move or that's fine. Rook to b7 check is what I played. And as I was talking, it popped up. That's the top move. Okay, king to h6 is their best move. I brought my rook up one to pin that pawn so they couldn't move their king again or the pawn. I mean, they could move their king again, but not the pawn. Rook to c4 is one of their best moves. King to g3 is one of my best moves. They're supposed to check me. They did. And here I have an only move. That's why it's marked as a great move because it's a difference between 0 and -5. Obviously, if I do anything else, they're going to take that pawn. So that's why I disagree with these great move designations fairly often because in this case, it seemed obvious. It's not like some of those cases where you have to like give up a knight and you don't know why, and it's brilliant. This is a case if I have to protect that pawn. So we're still even. They rook to g1 is one of their best moves. I guess it's because they want to come around here and check me. I wasn't sure, but I thought, hey, if we might get a repetition here. If they go back and I go back, and it actually is their best move to go back, but they moved over one, and I made this slight rook move. They went up here. Trying to keep me from coming back, but it doesn't matter because they're not threatening the pawn right now. I made a slight rook move. It's fine. We're still even. They made a slight rook move. I think at this point they began to realize that it might be drawn. I was personally starting to wonder. I still didn't know did they have a way to get that extra pawn down? I have heard masters say, like Gotham Chess, Daniel Naroditsky, these people that, rook versus rook is a draw even if one side has an extra pawn. I've heard them say that. That's what I was kind of counting on here. I just had to be careful. King to h3 because they weren't preventing me from getting closer anymore. They moved over one. I made a rook move. They tried to get their king out of there, and that's when I decided to start checking them, and you will notice almost all of these moves are checks here, the rest of the list, except for one, where I went back to guard the pawn. So I started checking them. They came out. They started coming down. I just kept checking them, and then at some point they decided to start coming closer to me, so I went back after they got that close to a6 to point at that pawn. I don't know what difference it would have made. I don't know why they can't still keep coming closer to me. Because that pawn's defended, I'm not going to be able to take it, and my king's trapped on the h-file. So yeah, but I guess I could just run up and down the A file. I don't know. Well, they started going back, so I checked them again, and they started going back, and we just continued checking until we got a repetition, which happened, eventually right about there. Well, I'm really happy that that it turned out well for me at the end. I feel bad for my opponent if this move here was a misclick, because you know how that feels. You know where you're supposed to go, and you make the wrong move. But I don't know if that's the case. If that was the case, I feel bad for them. They were definitely winning, but they had to go there or threaten my H-pawn. And so moving up there brought it back to even, and we stayed even the rest of the game. But do I understand this? That's the question. Here we're even if I... Yeah, I do understand this. Okay, so I don't understand the other blunder where I had the bishop pawn knight... the bishop pawn knight thing out in the middle. We were going to do some trades. I still think that was going to work out even. But this I do understand. I had to play f3 here. It makes sense. Complete and total sense. Those pawns aren't going to get away right now. I don't know why I was so worried about coming after these pawns. Plus that one's defended, so why am I, trying to get behind it? I had to play f3. I get it completely and totally. And even if my opponent didn't see it immediately, it's still there. And here, even if I had played it, it would have been too late. Well, I think I learned something from this game. Just pay a little bit more attention, but it definitely wasn't my worst game of the week, so I'm okay with it. Thank you for spending your time here, and I'll see you next time.